This is Western Canada's wrestling radio show.
You're going to have fun tonight.
Welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
A dazzling wrestling exhibition.
Here is Mike McGuire.
I love professional wrestling.
Hello and welcome to Western Canada's independent pro wrestling radio show. This is McGuire on Wrestling. Thank you for listening online or on the radio, wherever you are. And this week, a bit of a different show. We are airing on a Monday, usually in some markets, and posting on a Monday because, of course, WWE SummerSlam was a two-day event again this year, both Saturday and Sunday, the 1st and 2nd of August. There's lots to talk about coming out of that show, but there's also lots to talk about in other sides of the wrestling business. Despite what you may or may not have heard, there are other sides to the pro wrestling business, and we're going to dive a lot deeper into that this week with the launch of WWE Radio, with quote-unquote pro wrestling journalism in question in some cases, as well as, is it really something that needs to be monitored as far as integrity goes? Yes and no. And we'll talk about that a little more exclusively as the show goes on here. But of course, if it's your first time listening, welcome aboard. You're about to hang out with your friend that knows way too much about pro wrestling, loves talking about pro wrestling, and can basically compare any moment of their life to something in pro wrestling, because that's what us wrestling fans do. If you have that person in your life, then you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, then here I am. And it's a pleasure to bring this to you each and every week. Like I said, we post it as a podcast as well as other great shows through CelebrateWrestling.com. That's where you can find all our shows on our podcast feed. Subscribe to Celebrate Wrestling wherever you download your favorite podcast. And if you want to support the shows with a couple of bucks, you can do so through PayPal at CelebrateWrestling.com. Okay, plugs aside. Normally we do a big feature every week called the 5 Count. We're not going to do the 5 Count this week because, frankly, there's just too much to talk about, and I got too little time to get it all together here. But it was a big weekend for SummerSlam, a big weekend for some returns, for some in-ring WWE debut for someone who we've been cheering on for a long time here on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast, in one Nick Aldis. Big return for Kevin Owens, making it back into a WWE ring for the first time in 17 months. There was a lot of talk that Owens' career may have been over, but no, now he's the number one contender for CM Punk's WWE Championship. That match changing the way it did is a story in its own right, which spirals from the Nick Aldis match, which spirals from past week's TV. And we're going to talk about the past week's TV as well, the good and not so good, but not just in WWE. And that's where I want to start this week, because there was a launch of a thing called WWE Radio on Sirius XM this past week. And Sirius XM, of course, satellite radio, the digital provider for years now. And it spawned from a show that was once much like this radio show. Independent, just talking about whatever we want to talk about in pro wrestling, giving our thoughts, giving our unfiltered thoughts, the good, the bad, but also the many. And that's the thing that was most interesting about a show like Busted Open, is that it could talk about everything from WWE to AEW to TNA wrestling to New Japan Pro Wrestling. If something caught their eye or their ear from watching around the world, they would talk about it. And as we found out this past week, as we found out now with their adoption into WWE Radio, which flipped over from Pro Wrestling Nation 24/7, which was a great concept, a great idea, all wrestling satellite radio channel. I love it. But they did talk about all wrestling. Now, not so much. Now, is that a bad thing? If you're a fan of all wrestling, yes. But if you're a fan of WWE, and if you're a fan of pro sports radio or major league sort of discussion, it makes sense from a business sense. So we're going to talk about both sides of it here. I'm not going to totally trash the thing, because I think given an opportunity, if I were able to align myself with a specific company personally and call that a job, call that a source of revenue, call that an income, cool, great. But the question is, when does it become a matter of coverage versus selling out? And I'm not going to say they're selling out either. I need to be perfectly clear about that. It's interesting, though, because if you're a wrestling fan and you've been listening to shows like that for a while, or shows like this for a while, you want to hear about the biggest stuff in pro wrestling as a whole. You want to hear what's been going on in other places to other wrestlers you may know or remember. And so an example of that, some big stuff happened in our country this week. Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling announced that for their next big pay-per-view effort, they're going to have Edge, Adam Copeland, appearing on that show. Is he going to be in a match? Is he going to be an authority figure? We don't know yet. We don't know what his role is going to be. I would assume he'll be wrestling. He's got a long, long relationship with Scott D'Amore, with that entire part of the country, obviously. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But you didn't hear about that on Busted Open Radio this week. You didn't hear about that on anything that was under the former Pro Wrestling Nation banner. Let's go back to last weekend. Not this past weekend, the one before that. AEW Redemption, a show that had talking points aplenty, both good and bad, which in the past you would hear discussed ad nauseum on those shows. Not even a whisper. It didn't happen. It didn't happen at all. Instead, we were talking about what was building into WWE SummerSlam. I mean, they had some cool guests, don't get me wrong. Big kickoff with Seth Rollins and CM Punk. And you guys know me, I don't go for the gut throw on interviews. Like, I don't go for the guts whenever I have a special guest in. But I've never claimed to be that. I've had some great conversations with people, including now NXT star Cruz Montana. Go back a couple weeks on this show. You can hear then Mike Santana talking about his future plans. Go back to the holiday hullabaloo. Nick Aldis has been on this show with his wife, Mickie James, and we're hoping to have them back on at some point here. Although it's funny, as soon as the match happened, I did text him. He texted back. It was quick exchanges, but it's all good stuff. And I was thinking, do I ask for the interview? Well, no, because Sam Roberts has it now, right after the match. And Nick said everything he had to say, including the fact that he did get a little blown up during that match. We did notice, Nick, but you looked great. We're all very proud of you. But again, AEW Redemption didn't happen. Okay? Northern Rising, big announcement of Edge, didn't happen. Anything going on in CMLL didn't happen. AAA will get some mention because they're under the banner. So now the question becomes, where do we go from here? Well, this show is going to keep doing what we've been doing. And we're going to just do our best to talk about pro wrestling in a way that we feel is positive and we feel reinforces being a fan, makes you interested in thinking about wrestling different ways. If WWE Radio called tomorrow and said, do you want McGuire on Wrestling to be on there? I'd probably consider it and say, how much? I probably wouldn't even say that, to be honest with you, because the goal has always been expanding this show. This has never been about money, but if I could make this a career, absolutely. My radio career is itself 50-50 on right now. I'm not sure. I'm doing other things right now, and I'm enjoying it. But doing this show, talking about pro wrestling and talking about all pro wrestling is a priority for me and will be as we move forward. Now, the question becomes, who's giving us the most interesting things to talk about? Not going to lie, AEW kind of dropped the ball. with a, quote, subpar AEW pay-per-view delivery. Was it really, though? If you hang it off the main event, yes. But if you hang it off the card, if you hang it off title changes, if you hang it off things that happen throughout the show, there was some good stuff. And then we started to see the 90-day clauses wrap up. First ones to strike first, no pun intended, Motor City Machine Guns appearing on AEW. Does that mean they're back for good? Hope so. They got to be somewhere. And I'm sorry that the WWE run didn't work out for them. But seeing them come home, seeing them come out to a hot crowd, absolutely. Great to see that for them. Let's talk about the independent scene for a minute here. I myself, coming off of a mini tour, had some great experiences on that. Had one really not great experience, which somewhere down the line, I might delve into more. But that's the thing. We got to talk about the good and the bad, and we got to talk about it all. And I think that if you're a pro wrestling channel, then that's what you do. If you are a WWE exclusive channel, then you talk about WWE, and there's no problem with that whatsoever. None whatsoever. We're going to talk a lot about SummerSlam today. We have to. It's a great weekend for Canadians, friends. But the bottom line is that we are seeing the transition of what was once all-encompassing coverage now whittling itself down to those that are getting great opportunities. And I'm not going to slight any of them. But with that great opportunity comes exclusivity. So if you want to keep talking about pro wrestling, the biggest things you need to do are support shows like this, support journalists out there that cover the wide gambit of pro wrestling. And again, not a journalist. This show is an entertainment talk show. We cover it in a way that I feel is informative. We do bring journalists on. But I'm never going to claim to be the guy that digs for the scoops and the inside, because I want to stay a fan to some degree. And weekends like this past weekend make it hard. Okay, I'm literally in the middle of a camping trip right now. I came back to the city to record and produce this show, and then heading back to the campground because it's our August long weekend here. So I'm going to enjoy it. But I enjoy doing this show as well. And we're going to keep doing it because it's what we're supposed to do as a pro wrestling radio show. I feel. Now, things to talk about this week. Of course, we're going to delve into WWE SummerSlam. So stay tuned for that. I've got a bunch of your thoughts with Yay Boo coming up. Going to see if Dave Meltzer can call in time today. If not, we'll post a special segment with him in the next week here on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. But like I said, I'm on a time crunch as well here. So coming up after the break, we're going to talk about AEW Redemption. We're going to talk a little bit about the Rougeau situation because I'm fascinated by this. And I want to get your feedback as well. And of course, Yay Boo, your thoughts on WWE SummerSlam nights 1 and 2. That's all on the way. Thank you for joining us here on McGuire on Wrestling. Lots more show to come.
This is McGuire on Wrestling. More than just McGuire on Wrestling, the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Laugh along with Mitch and Dimitri on the alternate commentary table.
You're the champion over there, and I'll be the champion over here, and we'll be alliances together. It's like, come on.
No, you hang up.
Come on.
No, you hang up. Okay, let's hang up at the same time. 1, 2, 3. You didn't hang up. Me neither. I know.
Just search and subscribe to Celebrate Wrestling. Always free. Always about wrestling. Celebrate Wrestling wherever fine podcasts are carried. Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
To get that sort of moment, you know, that, oh wow, like I really like manifested something in that was a moment, that the entrance and all that, it was like something I'd manifested from 20 years, probably, maybe more. Yeah, it's kind of wild.
That is once again WWE SmackDown General Manager Nick Aldis talking about his experience walking out to the ring, getting that song Morning Glory from Oasis as his entrance theme. Wade Barrett, I felt, sold that entrance more than Nick did when Nick was coming out for his match. Definitely one of the best moments from WWE SummerSlam this past weekend. We're going to start with SummerSlam. We are still going to talk about AEW this past week as well, and some more news on some things going on in the pro wrestling world. This is McGuire on Wrestling, but back to the subject at hand. That was Nick Aldis talking to Sam Roberts on one of WWE's post shows. They got so much post show coverage now when it comes to these. And this SummerSlam weekend, I felt, just had a ton of extra interviews and insight, which good for them. That's one of the benefits of them having this WWE radio and this WWE media landscape, is that they're giving some really good stuff. Some really great, I don't want to say the word content because I believe that this is more than content, but some great insight on their product, which we don't always get as fans. And some people don't care about as fans. You just want to see what happened on the show and move on. But when you talk about moments that happened this past weekend, there were a bunch of great ones. Okay, let's go ahead and give one to Randy Orton here. Fans sure seemed into that when he comes in and ruins the title match for Cody Rhodes. That got some big noise. But let's also talk about things that happened on night 2 with Kevin Owens making a surprise return to the ring. People were excited. People were wondering. I guess there was some scuttlebutt going on. Again, I was at the campground, but there was some scuttlebutt going on that Owens might be making some sort of return. He did show up at the SummerSlam Fan Fest thing they had, having some fun with Kevin Owens, and he's been seen here and there doing things, but the discussion that Kevin Owens could, in fact, be coming back. Well, the announcement was made that Gunther was going to be added to the number 1 contendership match, but no, that's not where we went.
I didn't say I was only adding one more participant to this match. See, I made a second executive decision, and that was to make this a fatal 4-way match for the number 1 contendership, which means we need one more participant.
Are you kidding? That return? Man, people were crying visibly in the stands. You don't see that a lot of days in pro wrestling for guys and girls that have been around for a while. And we did see more of that as the show would go on. Chad Gable, in his hometown, born and raised, manages to win his first singles title. And what I loved about this is they did a callback to the unmasking from still one of the greatest matches of the year, bar none. Grande Americano versus El Grande Americano Original. Okay, let's not take away from that match here. But after he unmasked, he revealed who he was, and he got to do it again, this time as the Intercontinental Champion. Some great moments. Chelsea Green. Boy, did I think they were going to screw this one up. And I think if you were watching, you probably did too. With Chelsea Green getting on the ladder and then all of a sudden having the baddies come out and ruin it for her just to eventually make her way back up, come back to life, as it were, doing the Owen Hart hanging upside down from the steel cage moment, only this time in a ladder, and manages to pick herself up and become the interim WWE Women's Champion. Was that a replica belt? I think it was. Not that it matters, but it matters. Congrats to her. And then the main event from Sunday, which I honestly had very little interest going into. At least I thought I didn't have as much interest going into. But yeah, Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns delivered a match, and a really, really meaningful match. And that was the thing. There were some matches where, and we're going to talk about this with AEW in a second, some matches where it seemed like the fans were waiting for the worst to happen, the high spots. And this is criticism that I've heard from across the board, from wrestling panelists, from wrestling journalists, from wrestling opinionators, whoever. But then there are matches that still get you into the match. And if you can make that happen in 2026, get the fans invested emotionally into what they're watching, then good on you. Because we're seeing a shift in viewership. We're seeing a shift in interest. But Roman Reigns getting the win over Seth Rollins in a big match. Some internet sleuths were like, well, actually, he's beaten him before. And you're right. You're right. But they sold it this way, and they got it. So good for them. I thought the show itself was pretty solid. I watched night 2 on Monday morning, to be honest with you. Because, again, campsite. No service. Zero service at all. Plus, I caught a fish. So, I had supper to make. It was a good time. But getting to look back at the SummerSlam and go, hey, that was pretty all right. Then makes you want to talk about other shows that you've seen. Lord knows we got enough pro wrestling to watch no matter what. No matter where you are, whether you want to pay for pay-per-views or if you want to watch for free or even just watch through clips online. I mean, really, you can get a whole show's feel from social media clips these days. That's where the content comes in. They gotta feed that algorithm. But if you actually want to sit and watch and enjoy a wrestling show, then you have options. And there are some great options. WWE SummerSlam, I feel, delivered. I'm not going to say it over-delivered. I'm going to say it delivered. I think there were some great moments. I think they remembered what this thing is. But at the same time, there were also some things that we're not talking about maybe as much. One thing I haven't even brought up until just now, after all these other discussions, is Obafemi and Brock Lesnar. The Hell in a Cell match. People are like, they didn't use the cell. Okay. What do you want? They rip the ring apart. They're two meaty men slapping meat. To quote somebody famous. I don't know what more you can want out of that match. They're not flying through the thing. They're not climbing to the roof and dropping each other through. You want that? You're going to have to play the video game. I'm sorry. But Brock's too old. Nova's got too much of a career ahead of him to risk doing something like that. Plus, I honestly feel that thing is more the spectacle of itself just being the cell. Just hanging over the ring. The one question I would have if I got to talk to either guy, Brock Lesnar or Obafemi, and this would be a behind the curtains question I would ask. Were they rushed for time? Were they told we got to get out by a certain hour? We don't want this thing to run too long. Because that was the one thing with that finish especially. There was not a lot of drawing out of the exposed wrestling ring. There was not a lot of drawing out of catching Brock with that repeated fall from grace. Were they stretched for time or were they completely out of it? That's what I'm wondering. Okay, Nick Aldis himself talked about how in his match he was blown up. I don't blame you, Nick. Nobody blames you. Again, you got everything you wanted in a moment. The moments are what sell this thing. The memories are what sell this thing. The matches are what's supposed to feed those moments. WWE did a good job of feeding their moments. But we're going to get your feedback on the show coming up with Yebu. In just a moment, we're going to shift over to AEW Redemption, the Rougeaus, and a lot more. Hang on.
This is McGuire on Wrestling. McGuire on Wrestling, Western Canada's wrestling radio show.
Brett the Hitman Hart, how are you, sir? I'm very good.
Now spanning BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan.
MVP.
It's good to be back with you, Mike.
You can hear extended versions of the show, bonus podcasts, and exclusive interviews by following the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed.
Killer Cross.
I'm actually enjoying this conversation.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. Just search and subscribe to Celebrate Wrestling. Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Welcome back to a special edition of McGuire on Wrestling, Monday edition coming off of WWE SummerSlam. Your feedback with Yebu coming up in just a minute. But like I mentioned at the start of the show, this is an independent pro wrestling radio show. We are not affiliated officially with any company. And we like it that way because then we get to talk about everybody out there. And we talked a lot about WWE at the start of the show because, well, they just had SummerSlam. But let's shift back in time. Last week, we did not do a post show on AEW's Redemption. Honestly, timing didn't work out. Getting the availability to do a Monday show isn't always there. And so it just made sense to talk about it this week here. I know it's old news to a lot of people, but hear me out because there's a lot to discuss on that show as well. And I want to start off with what we just talked about. If you're just tuning in, we talked about moments versus matches, and sometimes how the matches themselves are succeeding and failing to have moments. And what I mean by that, if you've listened to me for the last few years, you know that one of my favorite matches is Bret Hart against Owen Hart, the steel cage match from SummerSlam 1994. Okay, we've talked about it in depth. I did a Legends and Champions with Stephen Bennett a while ago, and I talked specifically about that moment where Bret outsmarts Owen and manages to reverse the sharpshooter, which in my young wrestling fan mind, you might as well have just taught me the secrets of the universe. You know, just had that moment where, you know, you touch the, what was it? Not the Holy Grail, but what was the thing in Indiana Jones? You know what I'm talking about. The Ark of the Covenant, you know, you just show me the universe that the sharpshooter could be reversed. Again, me not knowing at 15 years old that this move originated in Japan and it's been around forever and blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Okay. What I'm saying is that moment here sticks with me many years later. And the question is, are the matches delivering the moments? I've heard a few people say this now, and they specifically say it about AEW, but it is happening in WWE. It happens in TNA. I've even seen it happen at indie shows that I've been a part of, good and bad, where some fans aren't reacting to the matches as much anymore as they are the high spots. Now, is a high spot a moment? No, absolutely not. Okay, a high spot is supposed to generate some sort of reaction, and that's it. And even then, the question is that what it's meant to do? Because you could say that any move could generate a reaction, right? A series of punches in the corner generates the reaction of the 10 count. So the criticism I've heard, and I'll name a couple names here, but these are all fair statements because I've heard John Pollock say it. I've heard Jim Cornette say it. I think I've even heard people on either Busted Open or I don't know. And I don't want to parrot people's comments too much here, right? This is original thought here. But it wasn't until they said it that it made me realize, okay, I'm not the only one noticing this. Is that there are fans that are watching matches now that won't react to anything except the quote car crash. And that's the term I heard. And they were comparing it to NASCAR. And I thought, ooh, first of all, I don't wish Maybe that's why I don't like NASCAR that much. It's not that I don't like it. I appreciate it, sure. But I don't go for car crashes. I go for great shows. I go for great entertainment. If a race, I've been to a few live indie races and stuff like that, and you see like cool moves, you see how it is a skill. It's like, okay, it's more than just cars zipping around and hitting the wall. It's there is skill to this. You can appreciate that. And that's how I look at pro wrestling. If you can tell me a story, make me care about what's going on with the same moves I'm going to see in probably every other match, but told in different ways, that is telling a story. I don't know that AEW Redemption delivered that. Were the matches good? Yes. Was the wrestling solid? Absolutely. I am not. Trust me, I am the last guy to criticize who's a good wrestler, who's a bad wrestler, yada, yada, yada. I've trained. I've tried it. I had past injuries that saw me from doing it, and I still regret it to this day because, man, do I wish I could ever have that one match. That's my Nick Aldis moment. Getting the chance to actually do a match in there. I don't need to win. I don't need to lose. I don't care. Just want to say that I actually did it. But the bottom line is that a wrestling match done right is like a movie done well, or a book that you've read that keeps you enthralled through the entire thing. You're not just waiting for the next moment to happen. All right. You can watch an action movie where it's just guns, 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 shooting, shooting, boom, boom, boom. Okay. But do you remember any of that? Not really. So I want to go through the card here of AEW's Redemption quickly and just talk about some of that a bit here, because I did watch the show, as I know many of you did as well. And we left some feedback on the Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page. Okay. A great idea of a moment, for example, Mike Bailey winning the number one contendership ladder match for the AEW International Championship. Hometown guy. All right. This was their version of Chad Gable. Problem is, didn't have nearly the build of Chad Gable. And I like Mike Bailey. I know the ACT guys aren't really sold on him. We've had him on the show. Again, past guest of the show. I like Mike Bailey as a guy. As a wrestler, sure. But man, if you're just jumping into this, you don't know anything about this guy. And they didn't do much to tell you other than, oh, he's from Montreal. Okay. Jack Perry, Mordos, Commander, Nick Wayne, El Clone, all in there. All great competitors. But again, where is the story? There was a lot of smash and bash going on. I don't know. I just don't know. The Bucks beating the Death Riders. Okay, there's a bit of a story there with Moxley and Ospreay, which is crazy to say, first of all. Or I heard somebody call them Moxspray, which I kind of like that. You got a story. But in 20 minutes, did they leave you with memorable moments? Or was it just a great match? Lots of high flips and kicks and stuff. Sure. Kyle Fletcher Bandito. Kyle Fletcher is a star. Kyle Fletcher is something special. Kyle Fletcher, still your international champion. Good for him. The Dogs and the Bang Bang Gang. Double chain tag team match. So the double dog collar gimmick, right? Again, it was a lot of ooh, ah, but not a lot of oh, interesting. I'm trying to think back to that match now. It's been a week and I can't remember anything that really stood out in my mind about it. Maya World, Hikaru Shida. They're doing something with Maya World. That's good. That's always good to see a new face get an opportunity. Shida's been there since day one. That's good. They need to do something with Maya World or somebody. Is Maya World that person? I'm not here to criticize. Again, there are some people that say she's not ready yet. There are some people saying it's too soon. Look, they're doing what they can with what they got. Cage and Cope versus Claudio and Pac. What is the history? What is the story? Again, is it cool to see Cope come out and get his theme song sung to him? Always. But even then, have you noticed that sometimes it becomes a little tired? Where it's like, if they stop the song too soon and the fans got too much to sing, they kind of die out. They come back in. And trust me, I'm a huge Edge fan. Again, always calling him Edge. Sorry, the way it is. Claudio and Pac, not really the opponents we're looking to take the tag titles from. We're all driving towards that Bucks match and perhaps a Daybreak. I don't know if that's the name they're going with, but did you guys see that New Day video that Kofi and Austin Creed released? Holy, what a video. And now I want to talk about the prime moment of what other guys and girls have been calling a car crash. And that is the Painmaker, Chris Jericho, again, former guest of this show. Chris Jericho was really nice to me on that show. Has been kind of a jerk in the past. But you know what? Everybody has days. Jericho as the Painmaker, defeating Tommaso Ciampa in a no-holds-barred match with the use of a power drill being involved. We're on the radio. I'm not going to get into it, but the bottom line is a power drill was threatened to be used on another human in a wrestling match. Just saying it. Okay, be a rational person. Don't be a wrestling fan for a second. Don't be an AEW sicko for a second. Be a rational human. I'm going to take this drill to your head. Okay, it was a funny line in the original Ghostbusters. Hey, Egon, do you remember when I stopped you from trying to drill that hole in your head? That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me. See? We don't even know what the context was. But it's funny. In a wrestling match? In an almost 20-minute wrestling match? No, actually, it was over 20 minutes. That thing went forever. Anyway. Andrade El Idolo gets a pinfall over Mark Davis. Becomes the new national champion. Good for him. I don't know what Andrade is doing, but it's working. People are into it. How you know? Because you watch TV. Willow Nightingale becomes the new AEW Women's World Champion. That's clearly setting up for Mercedes. Good. And then Kenny Omega defeating Kevin Knight by pinfall. And of course, the big story is what happened after the match. And that again is where fans who were either at the show or were resisting going to the show have an argument to say, was it worth going to see this match? If the match isn't selling me on being there, if the story of the match isn't selling me on being there, if I don't believe at all that this is going to be something memorable, and let's face it, it was a serviceable match, to quote Joe Agonaldo. But that's it. That's all it was. One more thing, and I've been picking up names that I'm dropping all over the place here. But again, former guest of the show, whether you like it or not, he came on the show and talked about it, Jacques Rougeau. More people were talking about Jacques Rougeau after AEW Redemption than they were talking about anything that happened on that show, at least on my feed. I don't know about you. But I've seen and heard a lot about Jacques Rougeau over the years. And like I said, I've had Jacques on the show. I remember being very critical of Jacques as a fan, just to myself back in the day when the Benoit tragedy happened. You know, a heinous event, and you saw every wrestler of every ilk coming out to try and get screen time. And look, with all due respect, you know, Jacques was one of them. He's on CNN all of a sudden. Why? You weren't working with the guy then. I don't know that you worked with him all that much in WCW. I just never got it. There's a lot of scuttlebutt on our message boards and our Facebook page specifically talking about his past in Quebec and the Montreal wrestling scene. And I keep getting told, well, talk to Pat LaPrade about it. Talk to Pat LaPrade about it. I've reached out to Pat LaPrade. I don't know Pat at all. I'd like to talk to Pat. I know that as a historian and as a guy that knows the Montreal wrestling scene. He's one of the best. But I don't know the history. What I do know is that a lot of stories came out of Jacques Rougeau being part of this tribute to the Rougeaus at AEW Redemption, and that story took over everything. Everything. We're hearing about the video tribute, which, you know, if you have Jacques on your social media, you know he loves the AI. Jacques, to be fair, you love the AI. Okay, I saw the videos you did with Harry and Diana when you had that match coming up. Like, I'm sorry, I hate generative AI, and I really hate the use of it in things. If AEW is broadcasting on networks and stuff, and they have standards they have to adhere to, and the video doesn't air, that's why. That's why. Social media is still the Wild West. There are still broadcast rules and laws and regulations and things you have to clear. So, whatever. The video's out there now. More people have seen it online anyways than I feel would have seen it on the pay-per-view. But as far as the contributions of the Rougeau family to pro wrestling, I'm not going to argue that at all. Obviously, they had a big part in French Canadian especially. But I talked about this on our Facebook page, and this is where I'm going to close it on that. AEW needs to stop borrowing history from other places. They need to stop borrowing history from other people. Okay? AEW had nothing to do with the Rougeaus. AEW's had nothing to do with a lot of the legends they've, quote, honored throughout the decades. WWE, you can argue for some as well. Why is Antonio Inoki in the WWE Hall of Fame? Well, you know what? They can lay claim a little bit because they had some history with him decades ago. But instead of appropriating other people's history, AEW needs to focus on their own. And they haven't been around long enough. And I get it, because everything else is going to be a shill to sell tickets. And fans can see through that. And then you're going to have things like what happened with Jacques Rougeau and the Rougeau family. You think, okay, we're going to do something cool. It'll be a great idea. And Buddy gets booed out of the building. Again, I've had nothing but great interactions personally with Jacques, but I know that there are many people that say they've had the opposite. Maybe he's trying to, pardon the pun, redeem himself. I don't know. But the bottom line is, a week later, we're still hearing more about that than we did anything that happened at the AEW pay-per-view. This goes back to matches needing to have moments that matter. Not just high spots, not just stuff that people go, ooh, or oh, or table spot number 47. This has been a long rant on this, I know. And I appreciate you sticking around for it. You're listening to McGuire on Wrestling on the radio and online. I just got word from Dave, actually. He's having some technical issues, so we'll try and get him either later this week or we'll have him for sure on next week's episode of the show. But let's do the most important part of the show now, and that is your feedback to WWE's SummerSlam 2026. It's another edition of Yay Boo.
Yay Boo, yay boo, it's lots of fun to do. If you like it, holla yay. If you don't, you holla boo.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
WWE SummerSlam 2026 is the subject of your yay or boos, and I asked you to rate both nights, and you came out en masse. Here we go. Chris Holt, we're going to start off with your comment first. And Chris says, yay for night one, made Oba look like a star. I've not been paying a huge amount of attention, so it's weird to see Solo Sikoa being popular. Here's my problem with Solo being popular. He's not just being popular. That's great. I like the pew-pew thing and everything else, but he's kind of become an idiot, hasn't he? Like just a little bit, like he's a little too wrapped up in, look, I'm having a good time. And then he's getting caught. He's getting caught in stupid moves. Chris goes on to say, night two, I've watched mainly on mute while working. Great to see KO back and Chad Gable given a win. Can't say I paid a great deal of attention to the main event. Seth Rollins just has Dick Dastardly and mutely combined vibes that I can't shake. Chris, go back and watch it with audio. I got to say, night two was better than I thought it was going to be. Stephen Perry says, I'm going to give it a boo. Matches were fine. The long breaks between every match took me out of it. I learned this a little while ago from one of you. I can't remember who it was, but you said that you would let it skip for about 45 minutes. Like you do something else for the first 45 minutes and then you'd watch and get caught up. And to be honest, that's what I did with the Sunday edition. I watched Saturday live because I wasn't camping yet. But Sunday, I totally let run this morning, and it was the best. Getting to skip all those breaks, that's the Da Vinci Code right there. That's how you get through that. So, Steven, even though you said you're going to give it a boo, I'm going to say your boo is actually a yay. You enjoyed the matches, but the stuff in between, we can't rate the show based on that. And I get what you're saying, because I hate having time wasted. But I get what you're saying. So very rare will I give it a pass, even though your boo is actually kind of a yay for the show itself, just the in-between. Is that fair? And feel free to argue with me in the comments. That's fine. Paul York, considering how bad the go-home shows were, I have to say a massive yay. I mean, the moments that made me pop hard, like Owen's return, Chelsea winning the women's title, and Aldis coming out to Oasis, I'm actually looking forward to this upcoming Raw and SmackDown to see what's next. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I've been talking about the whole show, guys. Okay, the moments. If that can drag you back into after what has arguably been some pretty lousy TV going into this show, all for it. Love it. Thank you, Paul. Steve Whiteman says, I'm going to give it a pretty big yay. Both nights were entertaining and didn't drag. Although I do feel the whole event could have been condensed into one night. Highlights for me were Gunther Aldis match, Brock versus Oba, and Roman versus Seth. Really good main event. The only thing I wasn't keen on was Nikki Bella's 189th heel turn. Enough already. It's just tiring at this point. Yeah, and poor Brie Bella blowing her arm early and trying to work the match. Like, that was, yeah. You want to talk about watching car crashes, guys. Like, I feel for her. Hope she recovers soon. But yeah. Nikki Bella turning heel again. This is becoming big show levels of heel and face turns. Devin Axman, I would say yay, since I enjoyed the matches I cared about. I really enjoyed Oba versus Brock, although it's a shame Oba missed the wood with the finish. I don't think so. We don't need to see an old man get hurt, do we, Devin? He says, I thought that was one of Liv's better matches. Gunther and Aldis was awesome. Punk and Cody was nice in theory, but pretty sloppy. Okay. Everybody's getting on Punk for his moonsault. I think he's going to be on himself for his moonsault in a while. The other three matches could have been on Raw. Loved the opener tonight with KO back. The U.S. title match was certainly a match that happened. I do like Danhausen, and I thought the co-main event were great. I especially enjoyed tributes to Moxley. Oh, neat. 3 Mr. Big 6 out of 5. Really? Just 3? Okay, well, you know what? Devin giving it a yay. I'll take it. Eric Pankrat says, overall, a yay. There was good and bad to both nights. Well, when you have 2 nights and that many matches and that much stuff, yeah, you're going to have that, say the least. Douglas Grand, he says, overall, a yay. Night 1's highlights were the women's world title match and Oba versus Brock, though after the tombstone on the bare boards, all I was saying to the TV was, ouch, his knees. Yeah, dude, over 40. You got knees, man. Come on. He says, there were 2 matches that rather surprised me. First, the U.S. title match had me saying to my friend, I'd be fine if Corbin wins, but I know that's not going to happen. And then for the women's interim match, I said, I'd be so fine if Chelsea wins, but that's not going to happen. Okay, so basically, whatever Douglas bets on not happening, bet against him. That's how we're going to win money, friends. So if I was betting man tonight, I'd be broke. The IC title win for Gable was good, but I'm still standing and dying on the hill that says he should have been the one to take it from Gunther a couple of years ago instead of Sami Zayn. We can't go back in time, Douglas. Let's enjoy the now. So then he asked, what do you think is next for Oba? I don't know. I think he's got to go after Roman, doesn't he? What else can he do? He says, how about a U.S. title run first? What do you think is next for Roman if Oba's not going there yet? They can't sit on Oba anymore. They just can't. We're starting to run out of time here, so I'm going to try and plow through the rest of these. Joe Aguinaldo says, I'm going to give it a boo. Don't get me wrong. I was entertained, and there were matches I liked, but even though neither card was long, the 2-night thing made it feel like a chore to watch, and frankly, I lost interest in the card after the women's tag match on night 1. Really? That's kind of... all right. Well, fair enough. Sal loved a lot of this show. He gives night 2 a yay overall. Craig Usher says a yay. Show held attention and gave great entertainment, and that's what matters. Night 1 was fantastic. Plus, how can you not vote a yay when Matt Cardona wins one half of the women's interim WWE championship? Michael Parker, since there's no middle ground here, going to lean towards yay. Night 2 was a much better night overall for matches. Yes, even Danhausen. But Oba Brock night 1 was exactly as expected, which is a good thing. Also, KO's return with the win and Chelsea Green becoming interim champ. Go Canada! Okay, we're going over time, but I want to get these in. Chris Hodnod says, gonna say boo if this was an actual pay-per-view and not on Netflix. I don't think it would have had been worth the money. SummerSlam used to feel special. This one didn't. 2 nights, not enough build to some of these matches, and it came across that way. Some matches were more suitable for a Saturday night's main event or something. Hell in a Cell was a bit disappointing as there was no use of the cell as a weapon. Outside interference in matches is getting boring. Glad to see the additions to Zayn and Balor. Thanks, Nick Aldis. Welcome back, KO. Great to see Chelsea win. Good for Gable to win as well. Wanted to note the story of Nick Aldis, GM, National Treasure, and GM again has been a good one. Yes. Robbie Kemp. Since I stepped aside from watching wrestling recently, this was a yay from me. I wasn't bored. I enjoyed the majority of the matches. Gunther, 2 nights, yay. KO, yay. Danhausen, yay. Oba, yay. I can go on. I guess SummerSlam kind of brought me back to life. Welcome back to the living, Robbie. 2 more here. Blaine says, since thumbs in the middle is not an option, I gotta say boo. It was mediocre. Nothing made me come out of my seat. And for all their charging, it honestly just felt like a longer Raw. Yeah, but dude, you're paid Netflix unless you bought a ticket there, so you can't rate that, okay? I love you, buddy, but in all fairness. Last 2 matches of the night, 1 were good, but it was still below average. A Hell in a Cell match where they didn't use the actual cage. It was basically just a hardcore match. Okay. All right. Finally, Cody says yay, all because Chelsea Green. There you have it. Chelsea Green, Nick Aldis, Kevin Owens saving SummerSlam for us. That's my consensus from your thoughts. All right. I got to get back to the campground, friends. Enjoy the rest of your week. Dave's just texting me. We will get him back next week for sure. But until next time, as always, thanks for listening and letting me do what I do. Play safe, drive safe. See ya.
McGuire on Wrestling, online and on the radio. You can hear extended versions of the show, bonus podcasts, and exclusive interviews. Just search and subscribe to Celebrate Wrestling. Always free, always about wrestling. CelebrateWrestling.com.